Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Helena Carreiras. I am the rector elected of ISCTE. I will assume on next 19th of March. It is a great pleasure to be here today and welcome our guest. So it is really with a great pleasure to welcome you all to the conference Digitalization of Public Administration Between Ambition and Reality on behalf of the Rectorate of ISCTE. I greet everyone here in the room and also those joining us remotely via streaming. I know that there are several hundreds listening to us and that we have here also with us a broad academic community, including students from different cycles and programs. The PhD and Masters in Public Administration, the Professional Masters in Digitalization and Public Administration, among others. And also a very significant presence of public sector professionals, managers and technical staff from multiple public bodies. I would like to stress how the presence of these professionals is part of ISCTE's DNA as a university open to the surrounding ecosystem and pursuing what we usually call the third mission, a strategic pillar which reinforces ISCTE's contribution to socio-economic development in Portugal and the resolution of global challenges. The focus on public policy, institutional capacity building, and the digital transformation of the state is an important part of this vision, where ISCTE has a leadership role both through its courses and via ipps-iscte by training for public administration. Initiatives such as AI for PA, a digital innovative hub focused on the digitization of public administration, which ISCTE integrates through several of its bodies like INDEG, IPPS, CVTT, or ODAX, to use these acronyms, is a good example of our university's privileged connection to comparative debate, cutting-edge research, and bridge building between universities and national administrations. I would like also, of course, to thank the organizer, Professor David Ferraz, who is director of the PhD and Master in Public Administration, which I mentioned before, is also a distinguished researcher of CIES. And of course, would like to give a very special and warm welcome to our guest speaker, Professor Sabine Kuhlmann from Potsdam University, who is also the president of EGPA, European Group of Public Administration, as you know, of which ISCTE is an institutional member and active participant. Professor David Ferraz is a member also of the steering committee. Thank you, Sabine, for accepting to share your ideas with us today. This European linkage is really a strategic asset for us at a time when the complexity of public governments is increasing and domestic solutions are no longer sufficient. All of us being here today says a great deal about the relevance of the topic and about today's need for spaces of debate and bring together practice, research, and training. Digitalization of public administration can potentially transform how the state functions and how citizens perceive public policy success. It answers to a legitimate ambition to simplify, automate, integrate services, improve the citizen experience, use data to support decisions, strengthen transparency and accountability, and therefore enhance the capacity to implement public policies. But it often faces the harsh reality of historically bureaucratic administrations, Portugal being a good example of those. Unnecessary administrative constraints, organizational fragmentation, shortages of critical profiles, cybersecurity challenges, interoperability problems, territorial and social inequalities, and the risk that technology advances faster than the legal, institutional, and ethical capacities to govern it. Yet, we must not give up on trying to strike the right balance between ambition and reality. That's the title of the conference. That is what Sabine is going to tell us about. Not least because digitalization is about more than efficiency, but it's also about resilience and democracy. In a troubling global context, such as the one we're living through today, the experience of countries that have progressed their e-governments demonstrates how digitally mature administrations can maintain continuity during crisis, rapidly deploy support measures to citizens, and adapt to societal shocks. Moreover, digital platforms also open new avenues for citizen participation and engagement, potentially deepening democratic inclusion. This is why, at ISCTE, through the degree programs already mentioned, and our student community, you all here, but also through IPPS, we treat digitalization as a state and public administration capacity agenda. It is an agenda that combines leadership, skills, innovation, ethics, quality, and the digital transition of public service. In training, I highlight our commitment to models that respond to the demands of professionals and organizations, advanced training for public sector managers delivered online, and the professional masters in digitalization and public administration. What we value most is a direct connection to practice. At the end of the program, participants and students are challenged to identify a real problem and present an applied proposal, a pitch and a project, grounded in evidence and digital solutions, always framed by public ethics, data protection, and security requirements. In addition, applied work by our students across several programs is often developed with public organizations under formal protocols precisely to ensure relevance, access to real context, and implementation potential. In applied research and cooperation, we have been promoting and integrating initiatives that bring together knowledge, technology, and public administration. And here I would highlight the BIP in Digital Transformation in Public Services, now in its third edition, involving multiple European countries, as an example of practical internationalization and comparative learning. Innovation projects and knowledge transfer for digital modernization, involving teams and faculty from different areas, and collaboration with public bodies on concrete projects. Also, the Center of Competence in Artificial Intelligence for Public Administration focused on developing, testing, and validating AI and data science solutions around practical use cases, and participation in advanced training consortia aimed at strengthening leadership and modernization capacity with multiple partner organizations. In parallel, ISCTE has been producing applied evidence in collaboration with institutional partners and international organizations, including relevant work with OECD on innovation in public administration. We are also engaged in research projects aimed at defining the competences needed for public administration in the coming years with PlanUp and INA, where the digital transition naturally has a decisive role. And we also take part in international projects and scientific networks, including European proposals and consortia with the University of Potsdam and Professor Sabine herself, IPGov, International Public Governance, seeking solutions for complex problems that require coordinated governance at international level, often with a strong digital dimension, both in the challenges and in solutions. I was happy enough to follow some parts of the preliminary preparations and one of your meetings at least. So to close, this is not my conference, sorry, but I'm enthusiastic about this, now starting this new phase at ISCTE, and underlining the importance of this topic for what we have to do here. All of this converges to one point. Digitalization cannot be seen as an end in itself. It must be a means to create public value, improve services, and strengthen trust. A very lacking and needed element in all this, trust. Also, it requires informed choices, institutional capacity, ethics, transparency, cybersecurity, and inclusion. That is precisely why today's session is so important, to learn from evidence, to discuss what works and what does not, and to build a realistic yet ambitious agenda for public administration. However, this transformation must be carefully governed. The digital divide, data protection, and privacy risks, as well as the danger of new forms of technocratic opacity, remind us that innovation without safeguards can undermine the very trust it seeks to build. The challenge before us, therefore, is not simply to digitalize public administration, but to do it so in a way that is inclusive, secure, transparent, and firmly anchored in democratic values. I would like to thank Professor Sabine Kuhlmann once again for being with us and to congratulate the organizing team and you all for being part of the framework from where the needed solutions will emerge. All these challenges are really difficult, but together we can do it. If we look at the objectives and believe that the means are means and not an end in itself, I think we can do it together. And so thank you so much for being with us. I wish you all an excellent session and a very productive conference. I will have to leave you, but I'm sure this will be a very fruitful and productive moment. So thank you, Sabine, thank you, David, and thank you all very, very much.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. Let me also welcome you again as Director of the Masters and PhD programs in Public Administration to all of you present here at ISCTE, but also online. We know that we have many people, as our elected rector said, online from Portugal, but also from other countries. It is a pleasure to welcome you at ISCTE and to this conference. Across Europe and indeed globally, public administrations are undergoing profound transformations. Digital technologies are reshaping how governments organize themselves, how policies are implemented, and how services are delivered to citizens and business. Yet, as we know from experience, and our elected rector was saying the same, digital transformation in government is never purely technological. It is also institutional, organizational, and as we will see, cultural. In other words, digitalization is not simply about introducing new tools on platforms. It is about rethinking administrative processes, government arrangement, professional skills, and the relationship between the state and the society. And this is precisely the kind of challenges that comparative public administration research can help us understand. It is therefore a particular honor to welcome Professor Sabine Kuhlmann once again from the University of Potsdam, and President of the European Group of Public Administration. Professor Kuhlmann is one of Europe's leading scholars in the field of comparative public administration, administrative reform, and local government studies. Her work has significantly contributed to our understanding of how administrative systems evolve, how reforms unfold in different institutional contexts, and how governance structures shape policy implementation. Today, she will be presenting insights from a research project, DigiLog, a collaborative research initiative examining the state and effects of administrative digitalization across European municipalities. The project highlights an important idea that runs through her work: context matters. Administrative cultures, institutional arrangements, and multi-level governance structures strongly influence how digital transformation actually unfolds in practice. This perspective is particularly valuable for all of us working in public administration or studying public administration, because it reminds us that digital transformation is rarely linear. Ambitious strategies often coexist with particular constraints, from fragment governance structures to skill shortages and organizational inertia. For countries across Europe, including Portugal, these questions are highly relevant as governments invest heavily in digital transformation and seek to modernize public services while maintaining public trust and administrative capacity. We are therefore very fortunate to have you, Professor Kuhlmann, here with us today to share the findings of this research and your reflections on the opportunities and challenges of digitalization in public administration and in Europe. So, Professor Kuhlmann, once again, thank you very much for being with us here in the ISCTE community, in our community, in public administration, online, and every part in the world that they are following us. Thank you very much for being here and for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, dear David. Thank you very much also to the rector-elect for this very warm welcome, for inviting me to come to ISCTE. I'm very happy to be here. I enjoy your university. I enjoy the city of Lisbon. And so it's really a great pleasure for me to give this talk, to give this lecture. And I'm impressed about the high number of participants in this room, but also online. So I'm really honored, and I feel pleased about this huge auditorium and the huge interest, obviously, in the topic which I will present today. So thanks for coming and thanks for inviting me. My presentation, as David already mentioned, is based on a current research project, which is still ongoing, but where we are already in the position to present some interim findings, some first conclusions, and some issues for discussion. So you will see a number of slides, of graphs, of numbers, hypotheses, statistics also. You will see where Portugal is positioned as compared to other countries. And these are some preliminary findings, and I would also be interested in the discussion after the lecture, how you consider these findings, how you would assess them, whether you would contest even our findings, because you will see, well, where Portugal is quite advanced in digitalization as compared to Germany and the German-speaking countries. So there are a number of, I think, interesting findings, maybe surprising findings, and please share your opinion after the talk, share your contestation probably, and your reflections. So that would also be helpful to the project. So I want to position the project also, of course, in a European context. As David said, context matters. So I want to emphasize the importance of context conditions, of starting conditions in different countries. But I also want to shed some light and emphasize some findings from Germany. As I come from Germany, the context where I have grown up, where I am doing research, and where we also had a number of research projects concentrated on the German case. So I will also emphasize some results and findings specifically for Germany, and show you some peculiarities, some problems regarding digitalization in Germany, and you might probably reflect whether this compares to Portugal, whether it contrasts, or whether there are similarities. So we can use this. Okay.
The yellow?
The yellow?
Yeah.
Doesn't move. Oh, you see it. Oh, yeah, here. Okay. Yeah. So that is the content of my presentation. I would like to briefly introduce the research project. It was an international European scale research project where the findings are based on. Then shed some light and provide some highlights on the state and effects of administrative digitalization in Europe based on the research findings. Then turn to the context matters hypothesis and some comparative insights into this research issue. And finally discuss hurdles, barriers, but also potential solutions on how to overcome barriers and hurdles and problems in digitalization. Okay. Our project, maybe one back. Thank you. So that are the participating colleagues. We have a collaborative project jointly funded by the Swiss National Science Foundation and the German National Science Foundation, and together with some Austrian colleagues. So we are basically a German language group, but the project is in international European scale. So we did a comparison between 47 European countries, all of which part of the Council of Europe. And so this is our country sample, and I will say a few words about the methods, because we try to combine these overarching broad scale European perspective with large N in countries, with some more in-depth insights into specific country cases and even municipalities. So it's a combination of methods which we applied here. So what was the interest of the project? It was finding out how administrative digitalization in European local governments evolves, what dynamics we can identify, and what effects result from these digitalization activities. So our focus was not so much the national or federal, because it's all for these three countries were federal countries, it's not the national or federal level of administration, but the local level. Because this was what was convincing to the reviewers of our project, saying that, well, this is a gap in research, is a research lacuna, as we do not know that much about the local level in terms of digitalization across Europe. So that is what we want to contribute with this project. We included all the 47 member states of the Council of Europe, and including 7 priority countries besides the 3 German-speaking countries, Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Our focus countries were France, Poland, Sweden, and the UK, as representatives of certain administrative cultures in Europe. So we wanted to have one typical representative of an administrative culture in Europe in order to have these in-depth insights into the country cases. We combined quantitative and qualitative methods besides a European scale survey with about 40,000 municipalities all over Europe, a quite moderate response rate. I will show you about this response rate. So besides the survey, we conducted case studies in these countries, 7 countries, and in certain municipalities in addition. And also we applied some innovative AI-based techniques called web crawling techniques, where we tried to scrutinize all the accessible websites of municipalities. So we worked together with data scientists, and these data scientists developed specific AI-based methods with machine learning tools to crawl all the municipal websites in Europe to see advancement and progress in digitalization based on these websites. So we combined these kinds of methods. So our sample were basically about 40,000 municipalities in Europe, where we were able to identify email addresses, because we had to send the survey somewhere. And as we wanted to address the municipalities on their own, so we wanted to have them as our respondents, we needed to find out about the email addresses of the municipalities. And so we found out about 40,000 all over Europe. The response rate was less than 10%. However, you should take into account that this is not that bad. So for a municipal survey on a European scale, it is not the worst result. Of course, we would have liked to have more responses, but it's fine. You can use it for statistical methods, so we can evaluate the survey, and so we are fine with this 7% response rate, which is the basis of the survey analysis. What was striking that we had a higher response rate in the northern countries and Eastern European countries, and more challenges in Southern Europe, but also most strikingly in the larger countries. So France and the United Kingdom, for instance, were really, really challenging, which of course has also to do with the high number of municipalities in France. So in France alone, you have 36,000 municipalities. And so it's clear that you have a lower rate there. But United Kingdom was disappointing too. They do not have that many municipalities, but the response rate was low as well. So we have problems with evaluating the results in these huge countries. So that is the methodological background and the databases. Now let's turn to the conceptual frame before then entering into the results. Our basic definitions of digitalization were along 3 categories, 3 terms of how to define digitalization. The first in literature refers to what is called digitization. So it's not digitalization, but digitization, which is just translating analog processes into digital ones. So you can call it an electronification of administrative processes, because you do not change the organization, you do not change processes, you do not change the institutional setup, you just digitize the already existing process. So in the worst case, from a purely or a poorly organized analog process, which you digitalize, you will get a poor digital process. So a bad digital process. So that's a problem with this one-by-one transition of analog into digital processes. The second is more advanced. We call it a digitalization. And this means organizational adaptations. So the organization will change. The processes are re-engineered. They are improved. They are reorganized. So you have these institutional reforms connected to the digitalization process. And that is the second level, so to speak. The third level is what we call digital transformation. And this means not just re-engineering, reorganizing processes and organization, but also achieving cultural changes, changes in the mindsets of civil servants, changes in the bureaucratic culture. And so it's relational changes, which are more far-reaching and more substantial and sustainable also than the two steps, which are less developed. What we also did in the project is to make a distinction between internal and external digitalization. That is an important distinction from the perspective of citizens on the one hand, but also from the perspective of administrations on the other. Internal digitalization is what changes within the bureaucratic setting, within the administration, in terms of e-filing systems, management procedures, data exchange within the organization. And on the other hand, you have the external dimension referring to what happens vis-a-vis the citizen, the public encounter. So what changes in terms of interaction between civil servants and citizens, enterprises, external stakeholders. And so we made this distinction also within our survey construction and asking about how advanced different countries and municipalities are in these two dimensions. I will not refer today to artificial intelligence because it was not explicitly part of the survey. Our third wave of the survey addressed artificial intelligence also as an item, but we cannot present findings yet. So this will be next time when I will be able to say a few words more on artificial intelligence based on the survey. And now on the empirical findings. Next, please. This is the national level. This graph, you might be familiar with the DAISY index, measuring the progress of administrative digitalization, public services, digital services on the national level. So it's not yet at the municipalities. And you can see here the German-speaking countries, which were in the focus of the research, Austria, Germany, Switzerland is not part of the DAISY, are well in the midfield, not that advanced. Portugal is ahead of these countries, so well on the, not on the leading group, but more advanced in terms of digital public service on the national level than the German-speaking countries. This graph shows you our own index, the Digilog index, which measures the external and internal digitalization of municipal services. So it's the local government level, an index which has so far not been existent. So it's a completely new index we created, we established based on our material, and which for the first time measures the municipal progress in digital service delivery and administrative digitalization. And you can see, I just highlighted some countries. So on the blue color shows the most advanced countries on the municipal level in terms of digitalization. And the yellow and orange is less advanced. Again, you see the German-speaking countries, at least Germany and Austria, in the midfield, but lagging behind somehow, as at least compared to the front runners. You have the front runners, as one might expect. The northern countries, Denmark, Norway, but also Estonia, as we all know, as one of the most advanced countries in terms of digitalization, also the Netherlands, but Portugal as well. It's quite advanced in terms of local level digitalization, at least much more advanced than Switzerland, Austria, and Germany. Which is remarkable, and I'm not in the position to explain it immediately and to find explanations to this comparative differences, but probably in the discussion we could collect some interpretations, explanations, and courses for these comparative findings, which are interesting, I think. Next. This graph shows you the external digitalization in municipalities, but only focused on the 3 German-speaking countries. So you see only Austria, Switzerland, and Germany in this graph, focusing on the degree of external digitalization. So local government vis-a-vis the citizens, the customers. And you see the picture is quite similar in the 3 countries. So red is Switzerland, blue Germany, and green is Austria. What is striking from this graph is that those digital tools, which are rather simple, such as downloading of forms, the possibility of providing information to citizens, the opportunity of submitting forms to the public administration by citizens. So all these more simple tools are fairly advanced in all the 3 countries. However, what is less advanced and progressed in all the 3 countries is the more sophisticated tools, such as AI-based tools, automated decision-making, online payments, processing, chatbots, for instance, AI-based chatbots. These more advanced digital tools are less common and less implemented in all the 3 countries. Germany performs quite well in online appointment systems. So many municipalities in Germany have the possibility for online appointments for citizens in the municipal administration and local government, while in Switzerland, in Austria, this is not that much the case. And also Germany and Switzerland are more advanced in online payment systems than Austria. So you see, but in general, these more advanced tools are less common and less implemented in all the 3 countries. Next slide shows you an example of external digitalization in Germany. So this is just results from the German case, where we had a specific survey on local one-stop shops. I'm not sure whether you have this kind of organization and institution in Portugal as well. It's a local level one-stop shop for citizens, where they can address a number of different services in one place, and a single window access for citizens for a variety of local services. And it's quite common, and every municipality in Germany, basically the larger one, have these one-stop shops. And so our question was, what is the degree of digitalization in these one-stop shops? And as you can see from this table, most of them have information systems or information available for citizens, online information available. Some have the possibility of processing forms digitally. However, what is almost not existent in Germany, in these local one-stop shops, is a fully processed online procedure. So what we call end-to-end digitalization, so that you are able as a citizen to complete a digital procedure totally online, from form submission or information gathering to submitting the form until payment and finalization of the process. So this is almost non-existent, the end-to-end digitalization, as you can see from the red colored column. There's a 10% for certificate, birth certificates. There's 1% for authentication. And so you see different services, and the end-to-end digitalization is virtually non-existent. That's a problem, because you have these media discontinuities. As a citizen, it's not very user-friendly to have, to submit the form online, but then you need to go to the administration to sign something or to pay something. So that's a problem. Now on the dimension of internal digitalization, again, comparison between Austria, Switzerland, and Germany. And we have a similar picture here, that some basic components, some quite simple components are implemented in the three countries, such as e-file systems, VPN tools, data exchange processes, hardware equipment. So you have these basic components which are implemented in most of the municipalities, and which are, by the way, necessary for AI advancement. So if you want to have AI in the municipal administration, you need to have first these basic components. If they are not there, you cannot start with AI. So it's important that municipalities have implemented these important basic components of digitalization. However, again, the more sophisticated tools, such as AI use, automation, AI-based processing, decision-making, or automated decision-making tools are underdeveloped. It's still, as you can see from the graph, they are not very much advanced. Speaking from a German perspective, Germany, from all of these three countries, performs worst in terms of data exchange, automation, and e-filing. This is something which needs further reflection, in particular for German policymakers and German reformers, because obviously we have a problem with data exchange tools and with some key elements of automation and AI applications, also for the future. So next slide. Again, some deep dive or some closer insight into the German case. Here, these are results from three particular administrative sectors or task areas, which are locally based, with a local affiliation, a local institutional setup. Vehicle administration or registration, building authorities, and tax offices. So there was a specific questions on these three areas. And what is interesting here is to see that although in all of these three locally based sectors, the administration have introduced electronic file systems, so electronic e-file systems, e-file management systems. Most of them still have paper-based work. So what we perceive in the administration is the duplication of paper-based management, paper, analog files on the one hand, and e-files on the other hand. So they simply do both. And it's striking, if you look at tax offices, 100% of the German tax offices have e-files as well as paper files. So for the employees, it's doubling of the work. And that's part of the problem. as we are obviously not there in the real digital world, but in a kind of a transitionary process where there's also duplication of work. And we will see this in some critical reflections of the employees, of the public servants, who feel kind of even growing burdens instead of relief due to digitalization. But I will come back to this later on. Next. Well, this is the perceived changes, improvements in service delivery from a European comparative perspective. So again, you see here now all the countries from our survey sample. And what is interesting here is that those who are front runners in the digitalization, so in particular the Nordic countries, you remember the first slide or the previous slide about the Nordics being very advanced in municipal digitalization, such as Sweden, Norway, Netherlands also. They do not seem to be the front runners when it comes to assessing service improvements. That is strange that those who are more advanced in digitalization are not automatically those who perceive the most striking service improvements. On the other hand, some of the, let's say, those countries who were lagging behind in terms of municipal digitalization, such as Albania, Greece, Northern Macedonia, Bosnia. These were countries who are not that advanced in digitalization on the previous slide, but who assess service improvements due to digital tools as being more significant than in the front-runner countries. So we have a kind of a contradiction here. Portugal, interestingly, we have a consistency. So I would interpret it as a consistency because Portugal was quite advanced in municipal digitalization, and also the perception of service improvements is quite positive. So you see Portugal in the second row here. So a very, very positive assessment of service improvements by municipal respondents. And so let's keep that in mind for the discussion and how you would assess it, whether you would contest it or whether you agree with this, or how you would explain that, and also in comparison to other countries probably. So we are still not at the end of our interpretation and reflection, so there's still room for some brainstorming in terms of interpretations. Next slide, please. This slide is again on changes in service delivery for all the municipalities all over Europe. So that's a comprehensive European perspective without making distinctions between the different countries. But for all the surveyed municipalities, what is clearly visible from this slide is that a clear majority of surveyed municipalities witness gains in effectiveness, efficiency, service quality. So it's a quite positive assessment of these effects resulting from local level digitalization. However, there are also some problems arising from this table. What is important, maybe not a problem, but it's important to see that the requirements, the competence and skill qualification requirements for employees are clearly increasing. So that's an important result from the civil service perspective. So digitalization means, from the perspective of municipalities, that the need for qualification, the requirements for employees' skills and qualification are increasing. So an important finding, I think. What is also interesting to see is that only a minority of municipalities see that the time for processing administrative tasks is decreasing due to digitalization. I mean, this is a part of the digitalization promise, isn't it? That processes will be accelerated, processing times will be reduced, waiting times will be reduced. But only a minority of municipalities say, yes, there is this kind of decreasing time scales. And so that's a critical finding, I think. Also interesting, a minority of municipalities says the number of employees we need to fulfill administrative tasks decreases or has decreased. It's also a promise by era to say, well, we do not need that many employees anymore. So there might be a reduction in civil service workforce. We can reduce the number of employees. It's something which is sometimes propagated also publicly. But municipalities say, well, no, it's not that we need less employees. That is not the case. And so you see, and also the error rates in service provision, it's only a minority of municipalities that see these decreasing error rate. So from this, the perspective of employees, of accelerating procedures, of error rates, there is also some contestation about the expectations, about the real life effects which are perceived by the municipalities. And I think it's food for thought and for reconsidering the success of digitalization at the municipal level so far. Well, this slide shows you again a deep dive into the German case. Again, the three task areas of vehicle registration, tax services, and building administration. And we asked the public servants what effects they perceive as a result of digitalization. And it was a mixed picture. I just want to pick one very striking result and critical result, which is stress, or let's call it techno-stress. Stress caused by technical problems from the perspective of the employees, the civil servants. And you can see the most striking results come from the tax offices. And by the way, this is the most advanced digital service in Germany. So the tax administration is the most advanced digital administration, and they are the most critical in terms of techno-stress. So almost 100% of the surveyed employees say that they experience technical problems with their digitalization tools, with their systems, with their IT systems. And so they are really critical in terms of technical problems and techno-stress. And in general, also a very critical result from Germany, the public servants grade the performance of their digitalization in their administrations rather low, rather badly. So in Germany, we have a grading at school going from 1 to 5. So 1 is the best, 5 is the worst. And so we asked them, which grade would you give the digitalization progress in your municipality, in your administration? And so you see from the table here that in the vehicle registration, it's 3.3. So it's rather satisfactory. The tax administration is worst, so it's inadequate. They say, well, no, that is really a bad grading. And we have the building administration in between, adequate, still adequate. But for a school student, you would say, well, this is a bad result, really a bad result. So again, we need to reconsider digitalization. We need to reflect about the hurdles, about the problems, about the halfway we are now to a really well-functioning digital administration. Next slide, please. So, well, this is a quotation, a quote from our interviews in the Digilog project. And so it's again critical, saying that, well, a lot of people are overwhelmed by it, by the digitalization. We have so many applications that do similar things, and we do not really know what they bought a new product for. So why did we buy all these digital products? We have a kind of a fragmentation and different IT systems, a layering of old and new systems. And so public servants are overwhelmed by the complexity also of technical systems in the municipalities. And next one, please. And another striking result before turning to the context matters part is some concerns about the future of digital administration. And what you can see from this table is a citizen survey we conducted in Germany. So it's again the German database, which shows you the so-called generational divide, or the divide according to age groups. The green column shows you the 50 plus. The red is 30 to 49, and then the blue is the youngest generation. And so we asked several items of them, several questions, and you see that the older generation, maybe expectedly, is the most critical and most hesitant. For instance, if you ask them, well, the personal contact with the city administration is more important to me than online procedures. You have clearly more agreement to this item by the older generation than the younger ones. Same with, I need a personal consultation. So elderly people are more agreeing than younger ones. And using online service is too complicated for me. More of the elderly agreeing than the younger ones. However, if you look at the percentage, it's still quite a low percentage of elderly, the elder generation, the 50 plus, which I'm also part of actually. So it's still quite a low percentage, a minority of the elderly generation who is critical. So it's a majority in the 50 plus generation saying it's fine by me. So I do not have these problems. So still we need to see the balance. There's a difference, but it's not catastrophic. Okay, next slide, please. Now the context matters. So different administrative cultures in Europe, of course. Next slide, please. Of course, digitalization is not the same phenomenon in all of the countries of Europe or on an international or global scale. So what we tried with this project is also to take into account that the context conditions, the starting conditions, the different administrative cultures make a difference for the dynamics of digitalization, the progress of digitalization, the acceptance of digital tools, and the degree of digital maturity in local level administrations. And last but not least, the effects which we can identify in the different countries. So we should take into account that we have different cultures in public administration all over Europe. And just looking at the European continent, we can make a distinction very roughly between these 6 types of administrative cultures, which are based on a textbook which I published together with some colleagues, and where we made the distinction between these 6 types of administrative cultures in Europe, just looking at the European continent, with the continental European so-called Napoleonic group on the one hand, where we have Portugal, France, Italy, Spain, so the group which were most affected or most shaped by the idea of a strong centralist state with municipalities or local governments playing a minor role, at least in the past. So the starting conditions are shaped by this, historic Napoleonic concept of the state, the central state being predominant in the intergovernmental setting. Contrasting to the federal type, the continental European federal type of administration, which applies to Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, with these federal systems where we have multi-level systems, strong municipalities, a federalized structure. But we also have the similarity to the Napoleonic group in terms of the rule of law-based system and the predominantly legalist system of public administration, contrasting with the UK, for instance, and the Anglo-Saxon countries. So we share this common feature of a legalist Weberian public administration shaped by the rule of law principle and a very important, a significant position of the codified law in public administration. And so just very briefly, the other 4 types. So we have the Nordic administration, Nordic type with Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland. I would also group the Netherlands here, which are unitary states, so they are not federalized, but they are also not centralistic. They are not centralist states. They are rather decentralized, with a very important position of local governments, strong autonomous local governments. And that makes a difference to the Napoleonic group, where we do not have this very strong and powerful autonomous position of local governments. And then the Anglo group, again, with the UK, but also Cyprus, Ireland, which are shaped by the so-called common law culture, where you do not have this very strong legalist tradition of the bureaucracy and the bureaucratic apparatus, but a more flexible, pragmatic culture with the judge-made law and not the codified law. So just to show you, we have this variety of cultures. Then, of course, the Eastern European part, Central Eastern European culture, Southeastern European culture, sharing the post-communist tradition, the post-communist history, but then very distinct pre-communist cultures. And so also this joint history of Eastern European countries is an important starting condition for digitalization in public administration and local governments. So context matters. We need to take into account these different administrative cultures. And so no need to read this. No, it's not possible. It's in German and it's really not readable. It should just give you an impression. Just let this image and picture be on your mind and just try to reflect it. This is how digitalization is organized in Germany. So this is the governance of digitalization of public administration in the German federal system. So you see, federalism can really be a mess. At least in administrative digitalization, federalism has many advantages, and many very positive sides. So no need to abolish federalism in Germany. But for digitalization and public administration, it is really a hurdle and a problem, because we have so many stakeholders, so many organizations, so many actors being involved in the process. And this is what this slide shows you. All the involved levels, actors, decision-making organizations, stakeholders, and relations amongst them, which complicate the whole process to a degree which is simply not manageable anymore. And it is one of the reasons why we are not really very progressive in digitization in Germany. It is one, it's not the only reason, but it's one reason why progress is really slow, complicated, and difficult in Germany. So one explanation is simply federalism and the multi-level structure and decision-making complexity of the whole system. Next, please. I'm sorry that I keep you working here. And so what we see in all the federal system, actually, it's also in Austria and also in Switzerland, but Germany is worst. We are the biggest from these three countries. So that's why it's, I think, the worst situation. We have this multi-level problem, the multi-level setting. And digitalization, as many other policy fields, but for digitalization, it's most severe. It cannot be handled at one level, but you have many levels and many sectors. So on the one hand, digitalization needs more top-down. So everybody's calling for more top-down, more centralization, more standardization in Germany. Everybody's saying we need more top-down. And so we had this legislation, the so-called Online Access Act, which was passed until 2022, when it was concluded. And it obliged all the levels, the municipalities, the lender, to digitalize about 600 services within 4 years. It totally failed. So it was not successful. By the end of this act, this legislative act, it was about 50 services which were digitalized, and most of them not all over the country. So it was really a failure. And so the top-down didn't really work. It was also not binding. There was no enforcement, no imposition. So municipalities did what they want. There was no really enforcement, no sanctions. And so top-down didn't really work. But bottom-up doesn't work neither. Of course, there are front runners. We have the city of Munich. We have very modern cities where they have good digital tools and where they are very advanced. The Bavarians, in general, they are quite advanced. But it's just some islands in a big country. And so it's quite fragmented. Some are advanced, some are lagging behind, some are the front runners, and some are just not taking part of the game. So, and we do not have any hierarchical control or imposition, just voluntary approaches of these solutions, no uniform standards, and again, still the ongoing need for more centralism, for more centralized implementation. This is the current call in Germany. So next slide, please. Here again, a European overview on how local governments perceive the central government support or the support of upper level governments for their municipal digitalization. So the question was, how do you perceive the extent to which upper level governments support you in your digitalization efforts? Or to what extent is it a hindrance? Is it a blocking factor of your digitalization? And again, you see, Portugal is very positive. So municipalities in Portugal do see the central or upper level support as being quite positive and quite enabling to them. While strikingly, on the other extreme of this table, you see Germany. Germany is the only country where municipalities say upper level governments are a hindrance. They are hindering our progress. They are not supportive. We do not perceive them as a supporting factor. So it's the only country where we have this negative assessment. So striking differences across the countries in terms of how intergovernmental relations are perceived, how central-local relations are perceived, positive, negative. And so fruit and room for interpretation. There are different approaches possible to interpret these findings. Next, please. And what we also did is to have, as I said, an in-depth view, deep dive into some countries. And this is France, Germany, Poland, Sweden, and the UK, where we wanted to know how is local level digitalization organized in the multi-level system, which policy instruments are applied, and what are the effects. And so this is basically a result of our country case studies with interviews in municipalities, interviews with stakeholders, that we really wanted to have a more in-depth picture of the different countries and municipalities. And so what was coming out of this comparison was that administrative cultures are very well visible in the governance setting of digitalization. So we see in those countries which are rather centralized in their setting, in their administrative systems, that also digitalization as a reform policy is quite centralized. So we have a top-down process or a centralized steering in France, in Poland, in the UK, or more specifically in England. So we looked at England. While Germany, clearly a multi-level structured, as I showed you from the slides, the previous slide, and Sweden, again, a highly decentralized country with decentralized, loosely coordinated structures in digitalization. So obviously the administrative culture, the administrative starting conditions are mirrored, are very well visible also in digitalization processes. Turning to policymaking and the predominant instruments and steering mode of policies, digitalization policies, we can see that in all of the 5 countries which we have here, there's a voluntary approach from the central government to the local governments. In none of these 5 countries, we could identify an enforcement towards municipalities. So irrespective of the degree of centralization, central governments refrain from coercive approaches. So they prioritize, they prefer a voluntary approach towards their municipalities. That was also something that was striking from our point of view, because I would have expected in France, as a centralized system, enforcement towards municipalities. Or in the UK, we know it from new public management, there was so much enforcement towards local governments. So I would have expected enforcement in digitalization. This is not the case. So it's voluntary, no enforcement. So we can brainstorm why is that? Why is that voluntarism in a local government digitalization? And in most countries, we see a more incremental approach, step by step, no radical approach, with one deviant case, which is the UK, where it's more radical because they, at least in legal terms, they adopted a digital first approach, or digital by default approach. That was the most radical in this sample. Looking at the maturity of local level digitalization, you see a huge variance across the countries, with the highest maturity in Sweden and the UK. These are front runners in local level digitalization, medium in Germany and Poland, and the lowest level, as you could also see from the graph before, in France. In France, it's striking because France was one of the front runners in previous years. They were the early starters, so to speak. France was one of the early starters of digitalization, dating back to the 1980s, even, when they started with some very simple digital tools. But then they lost somehow, as they lost momentum. And today France ranks quite poorly in these comparisons. And what we can perceive in all of the countries is growing divides, growing digital divides as a result of the advancing digitalization process. And these divides concern urban-rural divides in all of the countries, so more growing urban-rural divides, and in some countries also central-local divides. For instance, in France, central government tends to be more advanced in digitalization than local government, which also has to do with the structure of the local government systems. 30,000 municipalities in France, fragmented territorial structures. So we have these central local divides as well. That's an important result, that the problem of polarization and divides due to digitalization. Next slide, please. You need to remind me if I'm too lengthy. Then you just, okay. Okay. Another comparative result concerns the relation between digital maturity, or the digitalization progress, and local autonomy. We wanted to know whether more autonomous local governments are more advanced in digitalization, or the other way around. So varying hypotheses are possible. However, the results show that there is no immediate relation between the degree of local autonomy and the degree of local level digitalization. So we have some very autonomous local government systems, the Nordics again, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, which are also very advanced in digitalization. By the way, Portugal as well. Portugal is quite advanced in terms of local autonomy, measured based on the local autonomy index, but also advanced in digitalization. So we have this group of countries, high autonomy, high degree of digitalization. However, we also have digitalization front runners, which have a very low autonomy of local governments. As you can see here, it's Ukraine, the UK, Malta, Romania. So you have these countries where local governments have only very, very low autonomy levels, but are quite advanced in digitalization. You can see Malta, UK, and so no immediate relation, obviously. However, what we could see from our statistical analysis is that the more fragmented municipal systems, so territorially, if you have very fragmented territorial structure, this is a hindrance for local level digitalization. So the more fragmented a local government system, the more fragmented territorial structures at the local level, the less advanced local level digitalization is. So that is a clearer statistical relationship than the local autonomy as an indicator of, local government systems autonomy levels. Next, please. So what we conclude from the context matters analysis is that digitalization governance varies, as I showed you in the table, and reflects quite nicely administrative cultures and local government systems. Territorial fragmentation and federalism are huge digitalization challenges and cause problems to the progress of digitalization, as we can see from the German-speaking countries, the federal countries. However, a high degree of decentralization and high degree of local autonomy is not a hindering factor of digitalization progress. So highly decentralized countries with largely autonomous local governments can be very advanced in local level digitalization, as the Nordic countries exemplify. We see a convergence in terms of policy instruments, so policy convergence, at least with regard to the 5 countries we analyzed, where voluntariness is predominant and is preferred by central governments. A preference of what we called, based on policy typologies, carrots, programs, sermons. So all these policy tools for a voluntary implementation without enforcement, so no sticks. Sticks would be an enforcement instrument to enforce someone to implement something, but this is not really a preferred instrument by central governments in the studied countries. In most countries, we have an incremental change. Only the UK is more radical here from our 5 countries. Higher maturity levels in the Nordics, in the UK, but also Portugal as one important case here, while the German-speaking countries are lagging behind. Some of the Eastern European countries are also less advanced. Poland, moderate levels. France with strikingly low levels of digital maturity. And this is something, or these findings, cannot be explained by only one factor. So it's not just the local autonomy. It's not just the central government intervention. So it's not a single factor explaining the varying degrees of digital maturity, but it's multi-causality. So we have a configuration of different factors interacting to explain the maturity levels at local government, in local government digitalization. Strikingly, digital divides are increasing in all the countries scrutinized, showing an uneven progress in digitalization across the country territory, with existing and increasing inequalities in different dimensions. So some conclusions on hurdles, barriers, and potential solutions. So what are the main hurdles? And I just want to show you some quotes of our interviews, where many public servants, and here again the tax administration in Germany as maybe the most striking example, they were complaining about this techno-stress, the technical problems. I'm just reading through one of them. I can share the slides afterwards if you want to read it through. So one says, I'm very open to digitalization, but I find it annoying and counterproductive that a significant additional workload is currently being created. So additional workload. And the second one is also interesting. from Baden-Württemberg. I don't know whether you know the south of Germany. It's one of the most prospering areas economically. And so they say, the tax officials say, sometimes thousands of tax officials in Baden-Württemberg sit around for hours and can't work. People are frustrated. We are not lazy. It's made impossible for us to work because of technical failures. The IT systems are failing. So it's something they are really very annoyed and very frustrated of. So next slide, please. Just some exemplary quote. Then the problem of additional tasks, or the problem of digitalization in local governments being done on the side. So, which means public servants have to fulfill their day-to-day work. They have to deliver their services to the citizens. And on the side, in addition to this, they deal with digitalization. So they need to take care of new IT systems, of implementing digital tools. So it's on the side. It's not a task as such, but it's done on the side, which of course leads then to some overload or structural, even structural overload of human capital. Also facing the lack of digital skills. So what we are facing in Germany in general is a lack of skilled work in general. So we have a lack of skilled work, but we have in particular a lack of digital skills. And it's not very easy to recruit these skills. There's no one available. People are going to the private sector, so they are better paid there, so it's better salaries. So for municipal administration, it's really, really difficult to attract skilled labor and digital skills. So what do they say? They say, well, so we have an employee in our department who takes care of IT to a certain extent. He's actually a building inspector. So it's not a digitalization officer, it's a building inspector doing digitalization on the side. And another one says, well, I also have my regular job here. I do this on the side. I deal with building issues in my job. This is my main job. I'm a bit interested in digitalization. So this is how it works. They doing their job, but there's no one full-time for digitalization. And that's, of course, a problem of human capital of staff. Next, please. And another problem is lacking governance structures inside municipalities. So I showed you the governance outside, the intergovernmental governance structures, but also inside you need organizational units, governance structures to lead and to steer digitalization. And what these survey findings show you that in about half of the surveyed municipalities, there's no clear responsibility for digitalization. They say, well, all administrative units are individually responsible for digitalization. So there's no particular unit being responsible, but all do it a bit, so everybody does something in digitalization. And even more strikingly, about 70% of the municipalities, the local governments, do not have a chief digitalization officer. So a person who is really responsible for the whole, the comprehensive, the whole administration and digitalization. So there's no such position in about 70% of the municipalities. So governance and organization is a problem in municipalities all over Europe. And the next, please. And so to summarize the barriers and hurdles, we can make a distinction between 5 elements. We could add more, but maybe these are the most important ones. Legal hurdles, so many written form requirements, documentation requirements, still requirements for attendance, record keeping, privacy rules, of course. Privacy legislation is a very, very strict legislation in Germany, and one also of the reasons why we are lagging behind. We have very, very strict privacy rules due to our history. Also, it's a historic background in Germany. Then there are financial hurdles in many municipalities. Digitalization budgets are missing, so there are no sufficient resources to support the process and support digitalization project on the long run. Lack of skilled laborers, as I said before, problems also of accepting new technologies. It has to do with the poor performance of these technologies, of course, as I said, with Baden-Württemberg and the tax officials. So, of course, they do not accept these IT systems if they do not function well. So we have technological acceptance problems. And as a result of all these problems, of all these lacking resources, also overburdened staff situation. Political and institutional shortcomings. In many municipalities, there is no strategic vision of digitalization. So it's not a political priority. So the mayors, the chief executive officers do not see it as a priority. So strategic digitalization projects are missing. And there are just incremental, sporadic initiatives and lacking governance structures, as said before. And I spoke about the technical problems already, compatibility problems, interoperability problems, and so on. Next. Our solutions, which we propose, are connected to these problems. And so they are addressing issues of political prioritization, strengthening organization and capacities, developing skills and more flexibility in public servants' career paths, looking at implementation structures, in particular, re-engineering and improving the processes before digitalizing them. So first improve the process, then digitalize it or implement an AI. So no automation before improving the processes. Standardization and interoperability, something very important in multi-level systems, common unified standards, basic infrastructure for basic digital components. Of course, ensuring more acceptance for employees and citizens. And finally, and this will be my last slide, guaranteeing the digital readiness of legislation, of laws. So digital readiness of laws. And please, my final slide is this one, because in Germany we have a new legislation which obliges the federal government to guarantee the digital readiness of all federal laws. And I'm member of an advisory council, the Regulatory Control Council, which advises the federal government in Germany. And we give advice in terms of this digital readiness. Every new law must guarantee that it can be implemented digitally. So there has to be a digital readiness check. This is obligatory for all the ministries, for all new federal legislation. And with our council, this Regulatory Control Council, we check the digitalization check. So we check whether the ministries have done it, whether it's understandable, comprehensible, and contributes to reducing administrative burden, to reducing bureaucracy, and to advance digital public administration. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Kuhlmann, for this brilliant and stimulating, excellent presentation. Allow me to add a brief reflection on the Portuguese perspective. Overall, you mentioned that Portugal appears to be relatively well positioned in the European landscape of public organizations in the digitalization. And I believe we can say with some confidence that at the central government level, the country has made significant progress. Not only, I would say, in digitalization of the services, but also in adopting a broader digitalization transition approach as you present, in the sense you present in the beginning of presentation. Integrating technology and administrative reforms, service design, and yes, top-down approach as a Napoleonic model. However, let me also mention at the municipal level, the picture could be a little bit more heterogeneous when it comes to the services provided, not by the state, but by the municipalities. Portugal has 308 municipalities that differ greatly in size and capacity and resources, which naturally leads to different levels of digital maturity. It is also important to note that many of the services that in other countries are delivered directly by municipalities in Portugal are provided through the presence of the central state across the territory. Particularly, you mentioned the one-stop shops and the integrated services centers. At our level, those are public services from the central government. They are present in the different municipalities, but they are the presence of the center in that different regions, which play an important role in ensuring the accessibility and administrative integration for citizens through the country. But this is a specificity when it comes to the Napoleonic model and Portugal in particular. Therefore, I would say one of the factors that can influence the success in Portugal of administrative digitalization and digital transition is the degree of centralization or decentralization of the administrative system in this type of continental European Napoleonic model. From the Portuguese perspective and experience, we have observed that when governments are able to provide a common IT infrastructure that could be used also at the local level on a voluntary way, as you told, with standardized key processors, improvements, we could see also improvements in the perceived service quality from the point of view of citizens. And I think this is one specificity about our country and digital transition that is almost top-down, because also the majority of the services that you mentioned, they are not provided at the local level, but they are provided by the central government in the different parts of the country with the municipalities, but they are not services from the municipalities that could explain some of our results. But at the same time, I would like to highlight that local administrations can continue to play an important role in adapting services to local needs. Your presentation also mentioned that we provide like the framework by the central government standardizing. However, there are many specific needs that must be also attended at the local level, combining not only the national technological framework, but also the need for some proximity to service delivery to our citizens. And with this in mind, I would like to open the debate to you that are here assisting in the audience and allowing you to pose some questions to our invited professor, Sabine Kuhlmann, and we will be very glad to hear you and your questions. Please, you can make a little introduction just with the name and the organization or the course where you are.
Thank you.
Not too much, please be brief.
Yes, hello, Professor. My name is Ruth Serre. I'm a PhD of Public Administration student. And I would like to thank you very much for this excellent and very thought-provoking lecture. Your work has been extremely influential in public administration research, particularly in advancing our understanding of how administrative reforms and digitalization unfold within complex institutional and multi-level governance contexts. For researchers working on digital transformation in the public sector, including those of us studying the implications of digital technologies for accountability and oversight, your analysis of the gap between reform ambitions and administrative realities are particularly insightful. I'm particularly interested in your highlights how reform outcomes often depend less on formal reform design and more on the interaction between institutional and governance contexts or administrative capacities. From that perspective, how should we understand the current wave of digitalization and the growing use of AI in public administration? Do you see it as a potentially transformative administrative reform, or rather as another reform layer that will ultimately be mediated and constrained by the same institutional and organizational dynamics that have shaped previous modernization efforts? For now, just this question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can Colette, maybe you prefer to answer directly? Yeah, we can collect more, 1 or 2 questions, and then we finish the first round.
Hello, hi. My name is Pedro. I'm a service design consultant. I'm doing a PhD, but in science and information technology. My question, you've mentioned that one of the highlights of the survey, or one of the findings, was that people don't necessarily associate digitalization, or public servants do not associate digitalization and time savings or reduction on their workload, which is, well, surprising on one side, but scary as well. I wonder, what's your take on why this is happening? Is this just an avoidable output of any digital transformation project? Or is this because simply we have very poorly designed digital systems? And if it's the second, why do you think that happens? I mean, why do we have so many poorly designed digital systems? Sorry if it's a big
Very interesting. Thank you for your question. One more, if there is one more in this first round. No, so we finish this first round. Please, Sabine, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very, very interesting question. So thanks for these questions. I think they are very relevant and also not so easy to answer. On the transformative impact or potential, well, I think of AI, basically. It's of AI. I think there is a transformative potential. And there's also a transformative potential of digitalization. So I see this potential. However, it needs to be realized. It needs to be implemented. It needs to be grasped. And so this is the hurdle, or this is my reservation, that if we want local governments or administrations to use AI in a reasonable manner, in a manner that really improves performance, then some basic elements need to be established first in terms of digitalization. So if you do not have an e-file system, if you do not have an electronic data exchange, so what can you do with the AI then? AI will just be a component in this whole fragmented complex of technical tools, which sometimes are not compatible or are layered, as you said, layering. And that's why I think there is potential. But the design, I come to the design question, is still not in a state where I would say, yes, this potential can be realized. So therefore, I see the transformative potential, but I also see the risk that it could be another layer if we do not have it in a more systematic comprehensive overall architecture. And so I think that is the challenge here. On the time-saving workload and poorly designed systems, yes, it's striking that the results are rather disappointing here. And so my first interpretation would be we are only halfway in terms of digitalization, which is actually connecting to the first question. The systems and the models which have been implemented in local governments and in administrations are not comprehensively taking into account the whole process. So you have part of the process digitalized, then there's an analog part, and then maybe again digitalization. You have these discontinuities, media break, media discontinuities. Then you have the layering of systems. So it's poorly implemented, poorly designed. And this is part of the problem why the civil servants or public servants are not aware of improvements or relief. And in addition, they have this double stress or this double obligation of analog processes and the digital processes. So the paper file and the digital file. So it's an add-on. So it's not something which replaces the analog work, but it's something on top. And that explains why they are so unhappy with it. The second sub-question on why do we have so many poorly designed systems, or why? I think it has to do with this layering, because they started decades ago with the first systems. Then instead of establishing a fully new, complete system, they put another layer, which sometimes doesn't work together with the first one. Then there comes the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And there's no one responsible for the overall system. And so you have this layering of components which do not fit very well together. And that leads to these poorly designed, or answers the question, why is this so poorly designed? And of course, one factor which is behind all this is that digital literacy is simply missing in municipal administrations. So they do not have enough skilled workers, skilled officials, digital civil servants with digital literacy. And so it's also a problem of capabilities, capacities, and support for the whole process. I think these are some factors which explain why it's poorly designed.
Sabine, we have time, few minutes for a second round. We have some questions also posed online, but if anyone wants to put a question here presentially.
Thank you for the very interesting insights that you gave us on the perception of digitalization. And I have a couple of questions. That do you think that the newer generations growing with digitalization all around them and the digital landscape as a native working environment, do you think that they will be more able than us older people to deal with this digitalization challenge, that it's a generational divide, but not specifically a problem of the system in itself? And also I would like to gauge your opinion on, do you think that European legislation is a barrier on the adoption of AI systems that puts Europe a little behind China and the US maybe? Thank you.
Okay, some provocative questions also. Yeah. More questions in the room? Yes, please. while you are transferring the micro, let me just also pose one question from online. One of our followers, Ana Laranjeiro, asks if it is correct to affirm that countries with more digital maturity have also users on the public services that tend to have also more digital skills. There is a relation or not with this? This is one of the questions that our online followers pose. And now, please, here.
I'm Nuno Serras. I'm a student of digital administration. So I have a quick question. How can you evaluate regulatory legislation? Because the Union, European Union, tends to be a federal organization. So my worry is about that. How can you evaluate the politics that you are demanding to the local services? Because it's not easy to transpose that. On one hand, you can cut, for instance, for immigration politics. If you cut the budget, you cannot implement at local governments that situation. And on the other hand, maybe you can't have the budget to do the digitalization implementation. How can you evaluate that politics, that regulatory and mandatory?
Okay, thank you. So please.
Yes. Thank you very much again for these very thought-provoking, interesting questions. On the digital natives, the new generation, I think in part it's a generational issue, and what we have observed in the municipal administration is that those who do the support task, the teaching tasks in terms of digitalization, it's the younger ones. So they introduce, they help the elder generation, they give support, they are interested. So I think there will be. It is an important factor to bring it forward, and also to have a generation who demands digitalization. So they will demand it, even within administration. So if you have younger civil servants, they will demand it. They will say, well, why is that not possible? So I think it will be a more pushing factor. It will not remove all the bureaucratic problems, no, or the financial or political, but it will be a pushing factor, I think. On the EU legislation, whether a hindrance, well, I think compared to some countries such as China or India, EU legislation is of course more restrictive. But maybe for a good reason. So this is more a normative question. So we need to see where is the balance between what is still acceptable, still promoting innovation, and where does the balance then shift towards a tendency of too much restricts and too much constraints. So I think the balance is important. I do not see a problem in that the EU is somehow more restrictive than China or India, but I see a problem if too many enterprises say, well, this is a hindrance now, and this hinders innovation, and we cannot move forward. So I think the balance is important to see. And I cannot assess from now whether the AI legislation, how it will impact on enterprises, on AI development, on innovation. So we need to see, and also how different countries will implement it. So Germany will probably be much more restrictive than other countries. And so let's see the difference between the countries in implementing AI, EU AI acts that will also reflect, I guess, administrative and legislative cultures. So the online question on countries with more digital maturity, whether the citizens are also more we didn't explore this, so it was not part of the question, but there is some plausibility for me that it has to do also not just with administrative cultures, but with the state-citizen relationship, the technological cultures probably also, the advancement of technologies in general in a country. So my guess would be that there is such a relationship. I cannot prove empirical evidence, but I think it's plausible that there should be such a relationship. How to evaluate digitalization or digital policies? Well, of course, you can measure it by budget. You can see how the budgetary measures going into digitalization. You can check whether you have enforcement or voluntary implementation. It's part of the digitalization policies from the central government level. So what else? So you have different criteria to evaluate these digitalization policies. But one of my main criteria to evaluate would be the complexity of the governance. So if I have such a huge complexity of governance, such as in Germany, digitalization policy poses problems or has some really hurdles. So for me, it's a part of the evaluation setting of evaluating these policies. So you can have qualitative and quantitative measures in order to compare countries in terms of their digitalization policies. And I think it's very well feasible, and we have this information to do it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sabine, and dear colleagues in the audience and online. We are approaching the end after 2 hours of great intervention of Professor Sabine and also the audience. So I would like to thank you very much for the excellent sharing and discussion, the thoughtful questions from the audience, both here in the room and online. And I also would like once again to express my personally and institutional gratitude from ipps-iscte to you, Professor Sabine, for sharing these insights and contributions to this important topic about the future of public administration in many countries in Europe. So just to finalize, events like these are very important precisely because they allow us to connect research, policy, and practice, and to reflect collectively about the challenges that we face in public administration in Europe and beyond. So once again, thank you very much. I would like to also thank you for the presence here, the presence online, and desire a very pleasant rest of the day to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you from my side too.
Thanks.
Great.
Thank you, Sabine.
Another picture of the two of us?
Of course.
It would be great.
Of course. Where do you want? Here?
Maybe here, in front of us, or...
Ok. Posso pedir uma foto aqui?